Welcome everyone to the channel. My name is Pilk, and this is my episode review for episode 1 of DANMACHI Season 4. Before we get into this, guys, every time we do a episode review of this, I've done Season 2 and 3. Now we're on Season 4. Every single time, somebody does start dropping spoilers in the comments. And I'm going to kindly request you guys not drop light novel spoilers in the comments. Number one, we don't know how much of the light novel they're going to cover, though we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. Number two, there will already be enough spoilers for the episode, so if you haven't watched the episode, make sure you do so. But we don't really want to jump ahead. We want to focus on the information that we got in this episode. And one thing that I will spoil towards, well, not spoil, but I'll discuss towards the end of the video. But nevertheless, our episode, and by the way, this will include spoilers, as I said, for the episode, so if you have not watched the episode, make sure you do so. Let's just jump in. And before I do this, let me talk about episode 0 real quick. I know episode 0 was just like a total recap with some foreshadowing. But honestly, guys, episode 0, for those of you guys that are playing the mobile game, by the way, if you're not playing DANMACHI Memoria Freeze, you're missing out on some really amazing storytelling that's actually getting canonized. Stories actually written by Amori, the author of the light novels, if you're not aware. So, if nothing else, I'd go check it out. The game's stupid free to play, and you don't even need to, but download the game to get the stories. Like, the last, not so much 4th anniversary, but 2nd, 3rd, and the current 5th anniversary stories are phenomenal, very canon, and amazing. I really, really highly recommend them. Anyway, that's enough pitching. Let's get into it. So episode 1 really kicks off right at the end of the Asterius fight. And more or less it's just Bell is back at the mansion, and Hestia is doing his whole level up thing, and you see it. He is now level 4. And that becomes a huge talking point in the episode. Bell's level 4. You know, pretty much everybody can't believe it. It just becomes this amazing event. Fells confronts him about it. They have a back and forth we'll talk about here in a moment. Ina confronts him about it. Everybody's excited. Bell is, progressing insanely. I mean, insanely. In fact, when he is speaking with Ina, she talks like, it's been a couple of months. Your progress is insane, to a lesser extent. She's a little fangirlish over him at that point in time, but honestly, it really is just unprecedented, the amount of growth that Bell has seen since basically coming on the scene. In fairness, though, he's kind of been thrust into some really bonkers situations. The Asterius fight being just one of so many. The face-off with Dix, the original fight with Asterios, when he was just kind of a mindless Minotaur. All these things, the Pleasure Quarter, the War Game, everything he's been thrust into is just, nutty, just completely bonkers. And he has handled everything just like a boss. So, obviously, Hestia's surprised, but she also mentions it's not surprising. When you go through a battle like Bell went through, I mean, you just kind of are going to expect it. Real quick, I'll make a side note, guys, in regard to that. I was pretty critical of the animation in Series 3. Season 3 had some real shoddy animation. For better or worse, JC staff is still in charge of this season, but we've had, 2-3 years since the last season? 2 years, I think, since the last season. So hopefully we've been able to iron some of that out. I think we've gotten past this whole thing of, we'll throw out shoddy animation, and then maybe, which I don't even think they did for Season 3, correct it for the Blu-rays. So already the animation looks slightly different, though it is a little, I don't want to say pencil-y. It does look, we're in the era of legitimate all-digital animation. But some of this actually looks pretty hand-drawn. I really adore some of the stylization on the characters. But we'll see. The reason I brought this up is because they did, in episode 0, talk about the Asterius fight, and they showed some clips from that. And there's some moments where you're like, guys, come on. So hopefully JC staff is able to really bring it. But anyway, getting back to the episode. So Bell talks to Fells, and Fells is really like foreshadowing, oh, the bottom levels of the dungeon and all this and all that. They're really foreshadowing. I don't want to say the end game, but kind of sort of the end game of the story, or at least of Bell's progress. I mean, it's inevitable. He's going to become top dog, but it is very, very interesting. And of course, once again, he goes to Ina. Ina fangirls about his level 4, and he's given basically another note, another task, another charge from the guild to go back into the dungeon. And I like the fact that, and they did it in the light novels too, where they talk to Bell, and Fel specifically talks about his interaction with the Xenos, and remember that shook him. That shook him for a long time. It's like, are all these monsters really monsters? Or he really began to view monsters more as people. But it seems like now it's just more, okay, yeah, there are monsters, and then there are Xenos, and he's able to split the difference between them. But as I said, most of this is just kind of build up. You have Hestia's people going to the other familias, as always, and basically asking for backup. And they're going to build a big dungeon party for this big quest that they're going on, which hasn't completely been revealed, by the way. So really, really, really interesting stuff. And I do love the interaction, since, we are talking, the other familias are coming in. Oka actually confronts Welf, and more or less in a very machismo kind of way, asks him to build him a new weapon. And Welf's like, my stuff's expensive, dude. And he's like, give me a discount. Welf's like, no. It's hilarious. That, like, I remember reading that in the novels and kind of like imagining it a little bit more like, to me it seemed like it was a little bit more like chummy. No, this was like almost business, but hilarious in that respect. So I really did like their depiction of that. And so obviously you just really going around, you get some really good backstory actually between Chigusa, Mikoto, and of course Miach. And there's a lot of respect there that they really haven't kind of focused on, since they did skip altogether. I mean, with maybe a couple of pages, they almost entirely skipped book 8. And so you missed that whole story of, Mikoto's admiration for him. But you really started to get more of that here, and it foreshadows a lot of the growth that Mikoto has been receiving and will be. Basically, anybody in the Hestia Familia is just growing like crazy. And of course, you've got some great interaction between Aisha and Harahime, where Aisha's straight up like, you are the weakest link, and we're going to fix that. And she pulls out the Grim lore and is like, yeah, if we can't train you, we will basically force feed this down your throat, which is awesome. We haven't seen the Grim lores in a minute, so that's pretty cool. So really just everybody's building up to this big dungeon moment. And you eventually do get to see Oka's weapon. And I absolutely love the depiction of Oka's weapon. I'm really hoping we actually, since we already mentioned the game, a lot of people are already here from the game, really hope we get to see that in the game. That would be phenomenal. I really hope for next week's episode we get a new Oka and a new Oka weapon, which would be phenomenal. You don't get to see Oka a lot in this franchise. I mean, in this franchise, in the anime. He's been here, but he seems to be more prevalent in the light novels. It's like sometimes they cut and paste. And actually, that's a really interesting point I do want to talk about for a moment. This did not skip a huge amount from the light novels. It did skip a bit. But one thing that, as much as I was like critical of JC's staff and all that stuff, and we've talked about during season 3 how much they just skipped around. Sometimes they like pick and choose from the light novels, and okay, we'll take that piece and that piece, and we'll mash them together. Oh, we forgot that. We'll throw that in at the next episode. With only one real notable exception, they did follow the light novel pretty well. This is pretty much following the first 50 pages of volume 12, so they did a pretty good job. And unless I'm just remembering wrong, if I remember correctly, minor spoiler here, guys, Bell does get a new title. And I can't imagine that they're going to skip this. It might be something that they shoehorn in episode 2 or 3. But basically, there's a big meeting of all the deities. In fact, the more I think about it, I think it actually happens while they're in the dungeon. There's a big meeting of all the deities. I won't go too much into it, but they do decide on a new title for Belle. And that's a pretty massive moment. But the more I think about it, it's actually probably while they're already in the dungeon. So we probably haven't quite gotten there yet. I'm probably just remembering the light novel out of place myself. But it is worth noting that the reason I bring this up is because Amori is actually script supervisor on this season. He's not been a script supervisor before. So Amori is a very busy dude. I mean, this guy's writing the main DANMACHI novels. He's writing the Sword Oratory novels. He's even writing stuff for the game that I mentioned before. That's right. The anniversary stuff that I was touting is actually written by Amori, like the author of the light novels. It's phenomenal. So the long and the short of it is him being script supervisor means that we are probably going to have the best adaptation yet. It also means you can expect amazing stuff. As good as season 3 was story-wise, I think the animation suffered quite a bit. But most animation around that time was kind of crap in most series. I mean, it is what it is. But everything just seemed kind of rushed. It really feels like post-COVID, most of these studios were like, yeah, that didn't work. Let's not rush things now. Can we quality? Yeah, let's go back to quality. I think that's a good idea. So hopefully JC staff sticks to that. And I would think with Amori being script supervisor, maybe they're going to have a little bit more, I guess more of a thumb on their product, hoping that they produce what they produce. But getting back to the episode itself, basically everything gets up to the point at which they go into the dungeon and you get to see the first fight where Belle's kind of taking on these hornets. And it's a real interesting change to see. If you go back and watch episode 0, the difference between Belle when he first got in the dungeon and now. Because before he was cautious and like almost a little like unsure of himself. I mean, very much unsure of himself, in fact. And was fumbling around with monsters and all this. He's just headlong. And remember, the thing you have to understand, and they talk about this a little bit with Lily, where they're like, Lily's a strategist, a lot like Finn is. Once again, going back to the current anniversary stuff we're having in the game. For those of you that are playing the game, you're looking at this going, okay, yes, I see things here. I see things. The 5th anniversary story is amazing. But nevertheless, I'm going to keep going into that because, like, as much as I love the light novels, the game is so good too. Well, the story in the game is so good. It's a 5-year-old mobile game. You get what you get, but the story's phenomenal. Nevertheless, my brain works in a weird way, so I'm just gonna. So basically, the long and short of it is, you get to see Belle do his firebolt for the first time as a level 4, and he takes out an entire nest of like basically murder hornets that would have in season 1 literally killed him. Like, they would have absolutely like wrecked him. And now in this episode, you just see him handle them like they're not even there. And his firebolt, it has leveled up in such an amazing way. It's just got these crazy like auras that come out of it, almost like you see a depiction of a nuclear explosion. It looks like that. It's pretty wild. I mean, it's the best way to end the episode because you see Belle has just leveled up insanely. So if I was to give the episode a numerical rating, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Sometimes I get harped on for being too harsh, but if I'm truly honest here, the episode wasn't. I mean, I guess it wasn't like really action packed. It wasn't insanely hype. I will say the adaptation to the light novels is pretty respectable. They did skip a few things, but once again, remember Amori's covering this, so they did hit most of the important bits. Whereas in the past, they would kind of pick and choose and fly all over the place, and even forget stuff and shoehorn it in later. But it did do pretty well. It did skip a couple things, but nothing overly important. All the major important parts were actually handled, and I'm really hoping that stays the course. So yeah, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 overall. There were some animation choices I thought were a little insufficient. I'm hoping JC staff kind of is able to keep it together this season, because they really weren't during third season. Third season was pretty rough in places. But so far, and there were some minor character design changes that I don't think were a big deal, even though we have the same, basically almost the exact same directorial staff and everything. Really, the only change is bringing Amori in. And they've got some help from other studios, which really does make me feel like they're going to bring their A game with the animation. But, it's season 4. Like, this is not the time to phone it in. Like, you've got to make this work. So hopefully we see big things from JC Staff. Let me know your numerical rate of the episode down below. Once again, it's not an action-packed episode. Don't rate it by that. Rate it by the character interactions, rate it by the animation quality, rate it by the amount of hype it built. But I'm expecting to basically jump in both feet first in episode 2 with some serious action. So let me know what you guys thought. Like, comment, and share. I will see you guys for episode 2 next week.